We are talking now of summer evenings in Knoxville, Tennessee. In the time that I lived there, so successfully disguised to myself as a child. On the rough, wet grass of the backyard, my father and mother have spread quilts. We all lie there. My mother, my father, my uncle, my aunt, and I too am lying there. One is my mother who is good to me. One is my father who is good to me. By some chance, here they are, all on this earth. And who shall ever tell the sorrow of being on this earth, lying on quilts on the grass in a summer evening among the sounds of night? May God bless my people, my uncle, my aunt, my mother, my good father. Oh, remember them kindly in their time of trouble and in the hour of their taking away. And those receive me who quietly treat me as one familiar and well-beloved in that home, but will not, oh, will not now, not ever, but will not ever tell me who I am.
Many years ago, I read James Agee's book, A Death in the Family. And immediately, from the first words on the first page of the first chapter, that wonderful chapter, Knoxville, summer 1915, I fell in love with James Agee's words. And I knew very quickly that I needed to do a movie of this book. And what touched me especially was the subject matter, especially knowing that this was an autobiographical recount of the events before, during, and after his father's death when he was just 6 years old. And it is time to discover what I have to discover, and that is who was James Agee, who was this man. And I'm on my way to do it. So here we are, entering Knoxville, Tennessee, driving down Gay Street. Very near where James Agee was born and grew up. This is very exciting for me. It's very emotional. I'm finally ready to do this movie that I've been wanting to do for so long. And here we are. This is Highland Avenue. This is the place, the street, where the Agee family home was. 1509. Well, they have put up. This is no longer the Agee house. They've put up an apartment building. This is the picture of the Agee family home. And it's located at the same place where this big brick apartment building is now. The Agee family home is no longer here. If one house in Knoxville should have been kept, it seems it should have been this one.
Right now we're standing in front of one of the buildings that remains from James Agee's time. And James Agee, of course, he was known as Rufus in his childhood, but he wrote about these sandstone steps that we're about to walk up. And this is the front entrance to the church. So when Agee was a student here, they didn't have these nice wooden pews. They had rows and rows of cane-bottomed chairs. And it looks like this wood floor has probably been redone.
Yeah.
But he had remarked on how hard the floor felt when he was kneeling in prayer. He talked about this life-size crucifix up here. And
Why did James Agee come here to this school?
well, of course, his father died when he was 6 years old. A couple years after his father died, his mother was upset with the fact that he was growing up fatherless.
Yeah.
She met a man named Father James Fly, who was a history teacher and a priest, and he had just began teaching there. They met each other, and I think Laura realized how much of a positive role model Father Fly would be for young Rufus.
I see, yeah.
And so that fall of 1919, she decided to enroll Rufus as a student here. So his mother was the one who really shaped his earliest religious experiences. I think James always had a strong sense of the divine, the transcendent. After his formal education, he kind of drew away from the church, from organized religion.
Right.
But he always had questions. He would send Father Fly letters asking his advice about certain things, his thoughts. I think it remained with him, even though he wasn't a practicing Episcopalian. But Father Fly was someone that he highly respected. So this is the cottage that James would run to for motherly comfort.
It is so close. I mean,
Yeah, you can see the chapel from here
You sure
through the
can.
trees. This was the front door. It's in the same spot.
the porch probably very much like that as it was.
So this is where Laura, his mother, and her daughter Emma lived while she made James stay in the dormitory with the boys his age. And she allowed him to visit her here only one time a week. And again, I think she was well-intentioned. She was trying to strengthen him, help him maybe recover from this father, absence of father. But he was incredibly lonely during this time. In The Morning Watch, his novella, his alter ego Richard writes about standing as close as he could to the outskirts of the property and staring over here at this little cottage, hoping that his mother would see him, longing to be with her. Not getting this motherly support that he needed, you wonder how many of his later issues and struggles in life
Indeed. Yeah.
came from this time where he wasn't getting what he needed from his mother.
I guess there's no one to teach you how to be a single mother and make these kind of decisions,
Right.
especially back then.
Right,
I'm sure she struggled as well.
right.
It's so heartbreaking standing here, just knowing that. It's a young age to be expected to be a man.
It is. It is.
Oh my gosh. Picture of the Agee family. Knoxville, 1915. The city of James Agee's childhood and the year prior to the death of his father. James Agee, his mother, his sister, Emma, and this is Mary's brother, Hugh. So James Agee's uncle and James's grandmother. Mary and Hugh's mother. Amazing. Happier times. I love the look that she's giving him. What a wonderful photo.
This is Knoxville's market house. It was built in 1897, and it was the center of public life, really, in the city. But the farmers would have been bringing their produce in and be lined up along the outside walls of the market, and the interior had butcher shops and fish stalls and all kinds of different foodstuffs. So in 1915, this is a place that all of the characters in Agee's life would, at some point, have gone in and out of this place. This is a view of the next street over from the market. This is Gay Street, probably in the 1920s.
This photo could have been exactly the time when James was growing up. He could have been there at that moment. It's wonderful. And so many people.
Knoxville was a busy, bustling town at this point, growing, and the future looked very bright economically.
Yeah.
Automobiles in those days, they were noisy, and it was probably smelly, and so were the horses, and so were the town would have had the smell of food. I mean, there were lots of smells in the city. This is the north end of Gay Street, where you have an access down to the railroad. The city was built on a series of hills, and the railroad land on the lower level. There was a lot of industry going in East Tennessee during those decades. This would be a potential view of the kind of road that J. Agee drove up and back to visit his family in La Follette. This one appears to me to be a pretty good piece of gravel road, which was the best road at the time.
And here again, with a car on a dirt road out in the country, it brings to mind that this could be James Agee's father riding on this country road, on this dirt road, during that last fatal ride of his. In my quest to find out who James Agee was, I'm here in the old city of Knoxville trying to find traces of the past, traces of history, memories, anything that will evoke his time of when he was here in Knoxville. This is a wonderful book called Agee, His Life Remembered. It's a documentary biography by Ross Spears and June Cassidy. And Ross Spears was the first and only filmmaker to do a documentary on James Agee, a pioneer work. This is a picture of James Agee in 1932 when he was a student at Harvard. It was at Harvard that he started writing articles for the student magazines. You know, as he got older after Harvard and beyond, he had pretty specific political opinions. He once told Father Fly, I think the quote was, "I am essentially an anarchist." He wanted to be a free man. He wanted to not have to deal with authority, you know, and not growing up with a father. That makes sense. You know, we learn a lot about James Agee through his letters to Father Fly. He describes his sadness to Father Fly as, the quote was, "the irrational side of my unhappiness," and his tendency to melancholia. He taught to Father Fly about his desire to write, probably poetry. And many of his letters described his pain and despair throughout his life. Belinda, tell me about why you wrote this book.
Well, I wrote this biography because, first of all, Walker Evans was my favorite photographer.
Uh-huh.
He was really a hero of mine, and photography was my field. And
Agee chose Walker Evans for what reason? Because of the photographs? I mean...
Yeah, he loved his photography.
Okay.
They'd never collaborated before, so it was a kind of dream, you know, especially for Agee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here was just the kind of story he'd been wanting to write, a story about people. As the boy from Knoxville, Agee understood the mentality of Southern country folk. He would reveal the injustice of society. He wanted to move gently, almost invisibly, into the culture of Southern poverty. In Hale County, Alabama, a particularly poor and desolate part of the state, Evans struck up a conversation with a farmer. The man was Frank Tingle. Tingle invited the two journalists to sit on the wide front porch. Evans brought out his 8x10 view camera, and the Tingle family prepared itself for a group portrait. Mrs. Tingle then posed for her portrait, and then posed with her 7 children, as before a firing squad, says Agee. The children standing like columns of an exquisite temple. The Burroughses wished to be photographed outdoors, away from the inescapable poverty of their home. I receive a strong shock at my heart, and I move silently and quickly. I'm seated on the front porch with a pencil and an open notebook, and I get up and go toward them. In some bewilderment, they yet love me, and I, how dearly, them. It is not going to be easy to look into their eyes. He stayed on, writing late into the night by the light of an oil lamp, covering page upon page. As they were close to the end of their visit, the young Emma Wood appeared and said, "I want you and Mr. Walker to know how much we all like you. It's just like you was our own people and had always lived here. I had such tenderness and gratitude toward her, says Agee, that while she spoke, I very strongly, as something steadier than an impulse, wanted to answer that there was nothing in my whole life that I had cared so much to be told, and had been so grateful for, that I wanted her to know how much I loved them too, and her herself, and that I certainly felt that they were my own people and wanted them to be, more than any other kind of people in the world, whatever might happen to her, or that she might do in all her life. I wished her the best luck anyone could think of. And not ever to forget it, that nobody has a right to be unhappy or what people will think of them. The book was first published in 1948, went almost unnoticed. And then it was republished in 1960, and at that point began to become a cult classic, incredibly influential piece of journalism. And at that point, Walker Evans contributed a wonderful preface describing his friend, James Agee. At the time, Agee was a youthful-looking 27, a hint of family gentility and a trace of romantic idealism. He didn't look much like a poet, an intellectual, an artist, or a Christian, each of which he was. His gestures were one of the memorable things about him. He seemed to model, fight, and stroke his phrases as he talked. The talk, in the end, was his great distinguishing feature. He talked his prose, Agee prose. It was hardly a 20th century style. It had Elizabethan colors. He wrote devotedly and incessantly. Night was his time. In Alabama, he worked I don't know how late. His work was largely night-written. He must not have slept. After a while, in a roundabout way, you discovered that to him, human beings were at least possibly immortal and literally sacred souls. Agee's rebellion was unquenchable, self-damaging, deeply principled, infinitely costly, and ultimately priceless.
When I go through documents and pictures of James Agee, it reminds me again of why I want to do this movie about Death in the Family and James Agee, of how much the book touched me, about how it talked about childhood and how a moment can change the course of our lives. About how we go through our life in dealing with things that happened in our childhood, how everything begins in childhood. So, what is this snow globe here?
That's a replica of the snow globe from Orson Welles' movie Citizen Kane. You just need to say Rosebud, Nancy.
Oh, Rosebud.
It's one of the most famous props in the history of American cinema.
And this wasn't a gift from Orson Welles?
No, I had to buy it. Yes, I had to buy it. Agee was also a movie reviewer. From 1942 on, he started writing film reviews, first for Time magazine, and then in December, The Nation. He reviewed at least one movie almost every week. The English poet W.H. Auden wrote a letter to the editor of The Nation in 1944 saying that Agee's column about films was, quote, the most remarkable regular event in American journalism today. The reviews, Auden added, transcend their subjects and belong in that very select class of newspaper work which has permanent literary value. A.O. Scott, the lead reviewer of the New York Times, thought that American movie criticism started with Agee, and he called Agee the first great American movie critic.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the beginning of his relationship with John Huston and how they met and got to know one another?
Yeah. Agee wrote this about Huston. John Huston, next only to Chaplin, is the most talented man working in American pictures. Most of the really good popular art produced anywhere comes from Hollywood, and much of it bears Huston's name. Huston is a born popular artist. Huston later wrote about how he approached Agee to get involved in The African Queen. When it was time to start in The African Queen, I phoned Agee in New York and said, "How about it?" Agee left New York and his family and went to Hollywood. Then they started to write the script that was based on the C.S. Forster novel. Huston also wrote about their collaborative process. "I would write a section and give it to Jim," he wrote. "Jim would write it and give it to me. Most of what Jim wrote stayed as he had written it, and most of what I wrote, Jim rewrote." So the collaboration was a one-sided one, and much to my benefit, Huston said.
It's kind of hot work, ain't it, miss? I could do with a drink. Excuse me, miss.
The film, when it came out, got 4 Oscar nominations for Best Screenplay, Best Film, Best Actress, and Best Actor, and Humphrey Bogart won his first Oscar for Best Actor on that film.
You gonna have one, miss?
Katharine Hepburn character had a little bit of James Agee's mother.
What is it?
Gin, miss. Something the matter, miss? How'd you like a nice cup of tea?
Well, this could have been very honestly written considering Agee's drinking history.
Yeah, it's hard to say whether it was Agee or Huston that wrote this scene, or probably both of them, since they both did their share of drinking when they were working on the screenplay.
Oh, miss. Oh, have pity, miss. Oh, you don't know what you're doing, miss. I'll perish without a hair of the dog. Oh, miss. It ain't your property. Oh. Oh. Oh,
Have pity.
That's the Oscar scene right there, I think. Oh, yes, have pity.
Have pity.
Nancy, the script was also nominated for an Oscar. So Agee was one of his first big achievements in screenwriting,
right.
after he'd written in so many other forms. In March 1954, Charles Laughton, the great British actor, asked Agee to write a screenplay based on a novel of the same name, Night of the Hunter by Davis Grubb. Mm-hmm. It's a story of a psychopathic, demonic minister, magnificently played by Robert Mitchum, who pursues 2 children, a boy and his sister, because he wants to steal the money that they have been given by their dying father. I think the kids are so memorable, sort of innocence of childhood confronted with the demonic quality of the Robert Mitchum character.
Great villain.
Yeah. There's the kids out in the field, and then son talking with his father. That father-son
Indeed.
relationship that you see in Death in the Family seems to resurrect itself in a lot of things that Agee
It keeps coming
Agee
back
did.
to that, doesn't it?
Yeah. When the film came out in July of 1955, just 2 months after Agee passed away, it flopped. But a few years later, it began to be recognized again, and it's since become a kind of legendary film in the history of cinema.
These pictures of James Agee in Hollywood, there aren't a whole lot of pictures of James Agee smiling. And here he's smiling. And it's one thing I love about these. And this was a time that he was fulfilling some dreams. He was working with John Huston and Charles Laughton, and this was a good time for him. And you can see it in his face. There's real joy here. It's great. It's wonderful.
I pulled some material that I thought you'd be interested in.
Okay.
We have more, but I've got the folders laying on top here. I've got a couple first editions. There's some typescripts,
amazing.
Some correspondence.
Excellent.
There's also a few of Agee's drawings.
Where does all this come from? I mean, where do you get all this?
And it was the material that was in Agee's office when he passed away. So that is a lot of the film material. And so this is a copy of a letter to James Agee from John Huston, 1950. It's kind of amusing. Dear Jim, in heaven's name, what possesses you? As though your company on the trip wasn't worth all the money in the world. Well, maybe that's carrying it a trifle far. Let's say half the money. I've thought about that trip so often. It's one of the few things I'd like to do over again, having everything just exactly as it was.
I would so like to get together with you again. In about a week, I'm going to start on some kind of a vacation, go somewhere. How about coming along? That's a wonderful illustration of friendship.
Yes.
Right there.
Yes. Here's a photograph. This one's kind of interesting. This is James Agee and his wife, Mia, and Charlie Chaplin and his wife at the Stork Club in New York. And this was taken the night before the Chaplins left the United States. The next day they took a boat. So this was their last evening.
Oh.
And they spent with the Agees. So this is the first edition of Death in the Family.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to see that.
Oh,
yeah. So this is the typescript.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Knoxville, summer 1915.
Yes. We are talking now of summer
Evenings
evenings.
in Knoxville, Tennessee. When I lived there as a child. May God bless my people, my uncle, some wear and tear in the paper.
Yeah, I think my aunt.
Yeah, my good father. Remember them kindly in their time of trouble. After little, I am taken in and put to bed. Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yes, he does write beautifully.
Yes, he does. That's wonderful.
I thought you would be excited to see that one.
So, the very beginning of A Death in the Family, chapter 1, he starts talking about movies with his father. And this is what he writes. Chapter 1. At supper that night, as many times before, his father said, "Well, suppose we go to the picture show." "Oh, Jay," his mother said, "that horrid little man." "What's wrong with him?" his father asked, not because he didn't know what she would say, but so she would say it. "He's so nasty," she said, as she always did. "So vulgar, with his nasty little cane, hooking up skirts and things, and that nasty little walk." His father laughed, as he always did, and Rufus felt that it had become rather an empty joke. That, as always, the laughter also cheered him. He felt that the laughter enclosed him with his father. it all began here. His relationship with Charlie Chaplin, that James Agee would watch these movies with his father, despite his mother hating it that they went. But this was something they did together, and it became a dream of his to meet Charlie Chaplin, and they became friends for many years.
Whenever they walked downtown and walked back home in the evenings, they always began to walk more slowly from about the middle of the viaduct. As always, Rufus's father took off his hat and put it over the front of his bent knee. Rufus realized that his father stopped as much because he wanted to as on Rufus's account. He was just not in a hurry to get home. And far more important, it was clear that he liked to spend these few minutes with Rufus. During the 10 to 20 minutes they sat on the rock, he felt a particular kind of contentment, unlike any other that he knew, and that their kinds of contentment were much alike and depended on each other.
Okay, now after having scouted out places and talked to people about James Agee, it's time to get the actors together, hear the language, do some rehearsing, get it on film, and see how things go. This is the beginning of a fulfilling a long-time dream for me, so it's time to get started. This is where I want you to come down.
Gotcha.
The end of his conversation on the phone.
Okay.
So you've heard the end of it.
Okay. And just wait up here and look at him.
Just, wait until he's off the phone. And then we'll figure out your next move after that. Okay?
All right.
Any questions about the scene?
No, I can come down here, but do you want me when I walk down the stairs, do you want me to be slow as if I'm eavesdropping
Quiet,
and then
look quiet
listen?
and dainty so you're not waking the kids. And so he doesn't necessarily know that you're listening.
Right.
But you want to hear what's going on. So take your time, get to this step, and just listen, then we'll go from there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't necessarily acknowledge her.
Okay, so I don't see her.
No, and even if you hear her coming, that's not a big deal. Just concentrate on your phone call, and then she'll speak when you're done.
Ralph, just cut that out.
It's only my duty, Jay. God almighty.
All right, Ralph, I appreciate your calling. Now tell me about Paul.
I just got back for this, Jay. This minute. Hurried home special to ring you up. Oh, no, he ain't dead.
I should come up. Yeah.
Of course, that's entirely up to you, Jay. I know Paul and all of us would feel it's mighty strange if his oldest boy, the one he always thought the most of.
Hold on, Ralph. Just hold on now. What time is it? Do you know?
It's 2:37, Jay.
This is the phone call that changes James Agee's life, little Rufus's life, forever.
Right.
Because this is the last time Rufus hears Jay's voice. Rufus hears his father's voice. James Agee hears his father's voice the last time.
Hello, Ralph?
Hello, Jay.
Ralph? Yeah. Hello. What's the trouble?
Jay, can you hear me all right?
Sure, I can hear you. What's the matter?
It's Paul, Jay. I know I got no business to ring you up this hour of night, but no, too, you'd never forgive me if...
Quit it, Ralph.
I know you wouldn't have phoned unless you thought it was serious. Listen, I'm heading straight on out. I should be there by, what time is it now, do you know?
It's 2:37, Jay.
I'll be there by daylight.
Ralph, tell Mother that I'm coming right on up there just as quick as I can get there. Ralph, is he conscious?
Off and on, Jay. He's been speaking your name. Jay, it'd like to break my heart. He'll sure think his star is his oldest boy,
one he always thought the most of.
Cut it out, Ralph. What the hell do you think I am? If he gets conscious, just tell him I'm coming.
It's your father, Jay?
Yep.
And it's very grave, Jay.
Lord knows.
Has the doctor seen him?
He says he has a chance.
That could mean so many things. It might be all right if you waited till morning. You might hear he's better then. Not that I meant...
Sweetheart, I'd rather wait and see what we hear tomorrow morning just as much as you would. May all be a false alarm. I know Ralph goes off his trolley easy, but we just can't afford to take that chance.
Of course not, Jay.
Okay, so in this scene, you've been asleep, but something wakes you up. It's probably the telephone. And you can hear your father talking on the phone, talking to his brother. Now, this is the last time that you hear your daddy's voice. And you probably hear something scared in your dad's voice because he's talking about having to leave and go home to make sure that his daddy was okay. Okay? So this, all you need to do is listen and think about, wonder what they're talking about. Okay? I hear a fly. And that's all you need to do is just listen. Okay? Good.
What would you like to do for your birthday?
Why, Jay? Why, you nice thing. Why?
You think it over. Whatever you like best, within reason, of course. That is, of course, if everything goes the way we hope it will, up home.
Of course, Jay. Let's hope it will.
Well, Mary.
Then I'll hear from you. See you very soon.
That's right.
All right, Jay.
All right, dear. Goodbye.
Goodbye, my dear.
Nice. You know, what is so touching to me about this scene, what I love about this scene, this goodbye between mother and father, is that this is the last time they'll see each other. And they don't know it. And they share that wonderfully passionate kiss, which is, again, their last kiss, and they don't know it. And it touches me deeply. And then the thought of James Agee writing about him lying in bed and him hearing his father's, the wheels on the gravel as he leaves the house in his car. And just a great scene, touching scene, pivotal point in James Agee's life.
About 12 miles out the Ball Camp Pike. Brannick's. Brannick. It's right on the left of the pike coming out just a little way this side of Knoxville side of Bell's Bridge.
He'll come right out just as fast as he can. Thank you very much for calling.
That's all right, ma'am. I sure do hate to give you bad news.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, ma'am.
Very nice. Good scene.
Hello? Hello? Will you talk a little louder, please? I can't hear. I said I can't hear you, please. Thank you.
Is this Miss J. Follett?
Yes, what is it? Yes, this is she.
There's been a slight... Your husband has been in an accident?
Yes.
A serious accident?
Yes.
What I want to ask you, is there a man in his family, some kin, could come out? We'd appreciate if you could send a man out here right away.
Yes. Yes, there's my brother. Where should he come to?
I'm out of Powell Station at Brannick's blacksmith shop, about 12 miles out the Ball Camp Pike. Brannick's. Brannick. Is right on the left of the pike coming out just a little way this side of Knoxville side of Bell's Bridge.
Do you have a doctor?
How's that again, ma'am?
A doctor? Do you have a doctor? Shall I send a doctor?
That's all right, ma'am. Just some man that's kin.
He'll come right out just as fast as he can. Thank you very much for calling.
That's all right, ma'am. I sure do hate to give you bad news.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, ma'am.
Oh, God, let him be well enough to come home where I can take care of him. Take good care of him. How good to rest. Oh, God, if it be thy will, thy will be done. Ought to be hearing something pretty soon.
Yes.
Why didn't he tell me?
What is it?
Why didn't I ask? I didn't ask. How serious is he? Where is he hurt? Is he living or dead?
That we simply have to wait to find out.
Of course we have. That's what makes it so unbearable. No, I'm sorry. You're perfectly right. I've just got to hold it myself together, that's all.
Never mind.
If he dies, if he's dead, Aunt Hannah, I don't know what I'll do.
God help you. God keep you. You'll do well. Whatever it is, you'll do well. Don't doubt of it. Don't you fear. It's well to be ready for the worst, but we mustn't forget we don't know yet.
At least we're given the mercy of a little time. Awful as it is to have to wait. To try to prepare ourselves, whatever it may be. Whatever it is, it's already over and done with. He was gone already when the man called. He just couldn't bear to be the one to tell me. And no matter what, there's not one thing in this world or the next that we can do or hope or guess at or wish or pray I can change it or help it. One iota. And all there is now is to be ready for it. Strong enough for it. Whatever it is. That's all. That's all that matters.
Whatever we hear, learn, Mary, it's almost certain to be hard. Tragically hard. You're beginning to know that and to face it very bravely. What I mean is, this is only the beginning. You'll learn much more. Beginning very soon now.
Whatever it is, I want so much to be worthy of it. I feel so utterly unprepared.
I don't think it's the kind of thing that can be prepared for. It just has to be lived through.
I'm not gonna say he's dead, Aunt Hannah. Not till I know.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
This is the site of the wreck in 1916 when James Agee's father, J. Agee, was on his way back from La Follette and lost control of his car as it went over the bridge and ran into an abutment, and the car turned over. He was killed instantly, apparently.
Yeah.
They say that the body didn't have a mark on it except, I think, just one. On his chin,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
You're exactly right. But it was a fairly remote place at the time. The only thing in the vicinity was a blacksmith shop, and they carried it. It was in the middle of the night. They carried the body into a blacksmith shop, and they had a telephone there, fortunately, and were able to call in to Knoxville and have people come out and retrieve the body. In fact, in the real wreck, the actual wreck, it was not there was nothing wrong with the car. It was he just lost control of his car. They say it might have hit a rock or something and just went off the road. But that was, we don't know whether Agee made this up or whether he thought that or what. He was just a little kid when it happened.
Right.
Yeah. But,
He's dead, isn't he, Andrew? He was dead when you got there.
He was instantly killed.
I need to sit down.
Here, Mary.
Sorry, Mary. So sorry.
Andrew, I want to hear all about it. Anyway, you say he didn't have to suffer.
Mary, I saw him at Roberts. There was just one mark on his whole body, right at the exact point of his chin. A small bruise. The doctor said it was concussion of the brain. It was instantaneous. Mary, he couldn't have suffered, not even for a fraction of a second.
Oh, be thankful for that, Mary.
Mary, I saw his face. There wasn't a glimmer of pain in it. Just a kind of a surprise, startled.
He never knew he was dying. Not a minute, not one moment to know his life was ending.
Mary, in God's name, we can be thankful for that.
He's right, Mary. He's right.
It'd be a hideous thing for a man in the prime of his life to have to know. He wasn't a Christian, you know. He didn't have to make his peace with God. He was a man with a wife and 2 children. And I'd say sparing them that horrible knowledge would be the one thing we can thank God for. I'm terribly sorry I said that, Mary.
It's all right, Andrew.
Please don't be sorry, Andrew. You're right to tell me every last bit you know. I want to know. All of it. It was just overwhelmed me for a minute. He was 36. Exactly a month and a day ago.
Where's Daddy?
Daddy isn't here yet.
Then where is he?
Come close. I want to tell you about Daddy. Can you hear me, Catherine? Are you waked up enough yet, my darling? Daddy, your father, children, Daddy didn't come home last night. He isn't going to come home ever anymore. He's gone away to heaven, and he isn't ever coming home again. Do you hear me, Catherine? Are you awake? Do you understand, Rufus?
Why not?
Because God wanted him. Daddy was coming home last night, and he got hurt. And so God let him go to sleep and took him straight away with him to heaven. Do you see, children? Do you understand?
Is Daddy dead?
Yes. But we'll always remember him. Always. And he's thinking of us too, every day. He's waiting for us in heaven. And someday, if we're good, when God comes for us, he'll take us away to heaven too. And we'll see Daddy again, and all be together forever and ever.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Thank you.
You know, James Agee's father, his name was Hugh James Agee. But the stone only says James Agee. His first name isn't even on there. And I wonder why. And you know, his mother apparently wanted just a very simple inscription, in his strength. And he writes about that actually in the novel, A Death in the Family, how the mother wanted a simple, just in his strength on the gravestone. You know, when I was looking for music for the film, I wanted to make sure that it was music that had a significance in James Agee's life, his reality. And one thing we do know from his writings, and what we do know about James Agee, was that music was important to him, that Beethoven was his favorite composer, that he did know how to play piano. So I wanted to use Beethoven, one of Beethoven's sonatas, as part of that scene.
I don't wanna die like James Agee in the back of some taxi on the run. So much time wasted, the feast of life just tasted, then it's gone. But the life that he was living and the gift that he was given were all one. 'Cause the bad comes with the good, the madness and love, it's all or none. I don't wanna end up like Terry Malloy in a cab carrying on about how it's gone, and how he could have been a contender, and people would remember what he'd done. But there's fights that you don't take, and there's nights when you break and you run. But just do what you can do and answer to who you have to when you're done. But take that ride, 'cause we fly tomorrow to the other side. If we make it through tonight, and truth or lie, beg, steal or borrow, it will follow as the road goes out of sight.
James Agee's house was right there where this brick building apartment building is. James Agee's relationship with his father is interesting. His father was not as socially connected as his mother, and yet he had a much closer feeling for his father, I believe, when he was small. It was his father who did the fun stuff with him. He took him to the movies and took him on 2 trips to Market Square. So he wasn't able to write about his father's death for many, many years. He was in his early 40s when he began the book we now know as A Death in the Family. Tragically, he was putting the finishing touches on that book at the age of 45. He got into a New York City taxi cab, had a heart attack, and died. He himself left a wife and 3 small children. So it's almost like the book was his last gift to his family to let them know he understood how they were going to feel. Sorry, I can't help but be a little bit sad because he had so much more he could have taught us. But what we can do is remember what he did give us. And this book is something that Knoxville has kind of forgotten about over the years. But we should hold it close to our heart, because the poem and the book that comes after it is one of the most beautiful works of fiction ever written, and it's written about our hometown. But when you leave something, all of a sudden you remember all the good things about it. And that's what he was remembering with summer 1915. It was the last summer of his life when nothing on earth was wrong with his world. And we never know when that summer is in our own life, so you have to remember it every second.
We are at the Chrysler Building in New York City. My first time here, truly one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. And this is where James Agee worked for Fortune magazine. when he was 26, so this would have been about 1935. James Agee was an insomniac. He worked at night. And when he worked at Fortune, it was the same. And because he was alone, he would often play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony very loudly. Beethoven was his favorite composer. David, how did you first learn about, become interested about James Agee and his life and his work?
I think it was 1959, so I would have been 16, and the first collection of Agee on film, big, thick book of reviews and essays, came out, and my friends and I, who loved movies, picked it up, and we were astonished by it. We had never read film criticism like that. We had never read that kind of eloquence and detail and humor and moral passion. And I didn't start writing myself professionally as a movie critic for another decade, but I always kept Agee near me. There was no one from the time he stopped writing about movies as a critic, 1948, that could compare to him at all. I think people who also read him later were directors. Martin Scorsese, I believe, loves Agee's writing. He was writing for The Nation magazine, where he had complete freedom. And it's those of us who read it later, and I'm sure many people at the time, it was The Nation stuff that was so extraordinary. He would just give a little bit of a plot or just an idea of what the movie, he didn't do elaborate plot summaries or anything, and would jump into aesthetic and moral consideration of what the movie was and how it was somehow a picture of the nation's soul. It was this sort of hipster living in New York and leading a kind of bohemian, hard-drinking life, who in some ways was a religious man and in some ways a conservative man, a patriot, certainly, who believed in America. So what he saw in Hollywood movies both enchanted him and appalled him a lot of the times. He said a number of times, and in different ways, that film was the greatest possibility of a popular art since Shakespeare. That's quite a statement, quite remarkable. He was a complicated moralist, and that was what enchanted all of us so much.
John, good to see you.
You, Nancy.
And I appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk with me a little bit about James Agee.
My pleasure.
So I have your book here. It's fabulous, by the way. And what it tells us about Charlie Chaplin and his friendship with James Agee and their relationship and how important it was to James Agee. The famous photo taken from Chaplin's film The Kid of Chaplin, Agee's idol, and his adopted son, Chaplin's adopted son. That is the film image that Agee loved best, it seems. one might say that this photo of a father lost in the world and of this fragile boy who's looking behind him as if desperately looking for help or trying to get away from something. Undoubtedly, Agee identified with this boy, with Chaplin himself becoming this ideal father, a kind of a dream, if you could say that. And both Chaplin and Agee were raised without fathers.
For him, Chaplin served as an artistic figure who was, challenging the values of the system under which so many people were suffering. And if you think about the image of the tramp, the tramp is what today we would call a homeless person, as kind of like a victim of the society. In 1947, Chaplin came to New York to premiere Monsieur Verdoux. Agee alone defended Chaplin. Chaplin was, of course, one of the most famous, if not the most famous person in the world, and Chaplin was under attack because of his politics and the subject matter of his films. And for Agee, this was a terrible offense. And the political side of Chaplin meant a lot to him as well as the artistic. About Monsieur Verdoux, Agee wrote in The Nation, "Verdoux is Landru, the French Bluebeard. But why does Verdoux become a murderer? One good answer is, why not? Verdoux is a business realist. In terms of that realism, the only difference between free enterprise and murder is the difference in legal liability and in net income."
However remiss the prosecutor has been in complimenting me, he at least admits that I have brains. Thank you, monsieur, I have. And for 35 years, I used them honestly. After that, nobody wanted them. So I was forced to go into business for myself. As for being a mass killer, does not the world encourage it? Is it not building weapons of destruction for the sole purpose of mass killing? Has it not blown unsuspecting women and little children to pieces, and done it very scientifically? As a mass killer, I'm an amateur by comparison.
I think it is one of the best movies ever made, easily the most exciting and most beautiful of Chaplin's since modern times. Monsieur Verdoux is one of the purest and most courageous works I know, one of the few indispensable works of our time.
You know, in listening to these quotations from Agee about the movie, the quote, "As a mass killer, I'm an amateur by comparison. That's the history of many a big business. One murder makes you a villain, millions a hero." I mean, that's strong stuff. That's very anti-capitalist. It does not surprise me that conservative America at that time had a real problem with it.
If you were on the right side of the political spectrum, it was seen as taken as an affront to a society that had taken Chaplin in for 30 years.
The last 2 years of James Agee's life, he lived at this house on King Street, where he lived with his wife, Mia, and their 3 kids. This is a picture of James and his 3rd wife, Mia. And Mia, after James Agee died, did the amazing job of finishing, putting together A Death in the Family and getting it published. You know, you rarely see pictures of James Agee as a father. That's why I like these 2 pictures of him holding his daughters. These were taken by his wife, Mia. In this picture, he's holding Andrea. And in the second picture, he's holding Julia. Oh, and here's another good one by Helen Levitt.
Yes, it has, all of his photographs seem to have sort of a haunted quality. All right, this is another portrait of Agee. This one by Florence Homolka, 1951. This was taken in Los Angeles when he was working on The African Queen.
I see. That is a face of a life lived.
Yes, it is. And this was 4 years before he died.
So he was 42 here?
Yes.
Which must have been right about the time he had his first heart attack. Is that correct?
Yes. He lived a hard life.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. It's the same photograph session here, smoking. So this is while he was working on African Queen. He and John Huston would work during the day, talk about the movie. And at night, he would write and smoke and drink. And I guess it caught up with him. This is actually a wonderful I mean, it captures who he was. Just in the one moment, it captures so much about him. Yeah.
It catches him in an unguarded moment.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. In 1945, so he'd be 36, he wrote in a letter to Father Fly about his very strong sense of death. My premonitions, I superstitiously fear to write, I will die during this year unexpectedly, parallel to my father's death at just that age. It's so sad to me that he carried that burden for much of his young life. And you can't help but wonder if, with all of his premonitions of an early death, if he worked that hard because he felt like he had to get it all done before he left us at an early age. Great loss. James Agee's house is just 2 doors down here on King Street. So most likely he would have walked to this corner to hail a taxi to go to his doctor's appointment for his heart. James Agee continued to have problems with his heart. He was still working all the time. In the 2 years prior to his death, he had written 2 screenplays, but had mostly worked on his novel A Death in the Family, which he had begun years prior. The night of May 15th, 1955, the day before he died, he had gone to a party in the village and stayed out till 5 a.m., talking, smoking, drinking. And at that party, he had told someone that A Death in the Family was almost finished, but he still had another month or 2 before it was done. And the next day, May 16th, 1955, that afternoon, he got into a taxi to go to a doctor's appointment for his heart. And in the taxi had an episode of angina and lost consciousness. And the taxi driver drove him to Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at age 46, most likely of a coronary occlusion. So very much like his father, he died suddenly in a car in his 40s, although a few years older than his father was, but still, the similarities are amazing.
Daddy! Daddy!
What's the matter? What's the trouble with my little boy? What's he crying about? Bad dream? Then what's the trouble? You afraid of the dark? No. You're a big boy now. Big boys aren't scared of a little dark. Big boys don't cry. Tell you what I'll do. I'll sing you one song, and then you go to sleep like a good boy, okay? When they kill a chicken, she saves me the wing, my honey, my baby. When they kill a chicken, she saves me the wing, my honey, my sweet thing. When they kill a chicken, she saves me the wing, my honey, my baby. When they kill a chicken, she saves me the wing, my honey, my sweet thing. When they kill a chicken, she saves me the wing. Thinks I'm a working, ain't doing a thing this morning, this evening, so soon. Go to sleep, honey. Go to sleep now.
We are talking now of summer evenings in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the time that I lived there, so successfully disguised to myself as a child. May God bless my people, my uncle, my aunt, my mother, my good father. Oh, remember them kindly in their time of trouble and in the hour of their taking away. And those receive me who quietly treat me as one familiar and well-beloved in that home, but will not, oh, will not now, not ever, but will not ever tell me who I am. I hear my Father, I need never fear. I hear my mother, I shall never be lonely or want for love. When I am hungry, it is they who provide for me. When I am in dismay, it is they who fill me with comfort. When I am sick, it is they who send for the doctor. When I am well and happy, it is in their eyes that I know best that I am loved. And it is toward the shining of their smiles that I lift up my heart, and in their laughter that I know my best delight. One is my mother, who is good to me. One is my father, who is good to me. By some chance, here they are, all on this earth. May God bless my people, my uncle, my aunt, my mother, my good father. Oh, remember them kindly in their time of trouble and in the hour of their taking away. You hear the man you call your father? How can you ever fear? And those receive me who quietly treat me as one familiar and well-beloved in that home, but will not, oh, will not now, not ever, but will not ever tell me who I am.